37 साल में बहुत कुछ खोया इन्होंने।
सदमे की वजह से इनको मतलब दहशत एक बनी थी, वही दहशत अभी बनी आई है, इनका दिमाग खुलता नहीं है।
बस यही इतना है कि चलो आंखों के सामने है।
37 years behind bars, with no trial, no paperwork, no witnesses, and no justice. That's the shocking story of 73-year-old Jagjivan. It's a story of a man who was arrested for murder and then forgotten in jail.
It's a story that's going to make you cringe. A story that will make you sit up and question the system. A story that will make you want to live every moment of your life to the fullest. On Lost Lives today, we bring you the story of a man who was jailed at the age of 28, only to be forgotten by the system and discovered 37 years later. On Headlines today, we try to piece together another lost life.
The year 1968. 28-year-old Jagjivan from a small village called Khandasa in Faizabad in UP was living a normal life. He was the sole breadwinner for his small family, which included his wife and the apple of his eye, a son, 1.5-year-old Keshav. But his happiness was short-lived. Accused of murdering his sister-in-law, Jagjivan was arrested and sent to jail. But his guilt could never be proven. Once he stepped in the confines of the prison walls, Jagjivan was forgotten.
पता भी किया तो कहीं वहाँ अस्पताल जाएं तो कहीं जेल जाएं, भाई कहीं जिसे आप लेके किसी को चले गए, आप अपनी गाड़ी में हमको न साथ लेके गए न हमको बताया कि हाँ भाई रिश्तेदारी आपके भाई या आपके पिताजी यहाँ इस घर में जब चाहो जब मिल लो। भाई हम गए जेल में पर्ची डाले, हमको नहीं मिले, हम लौट आए। एक बार गए, 2 बार गए, 10 बार गए, 15 बार गए, लौट आए भी नहीं। तो आदमी वो हो जाता है ना, जिसको जब नियासरा हो जाती है तो अपने घर बैठ जाता है।
There was initial procedural paperwork, but after that the police seemed to lose interest. Meanwhile, Jagjivan, failing to get his side of the story heard, started slipping into depression. He started suffering from psychological problems. Seeing this, the court ordered he be shifted to the Varanasi mental hospital and his health reports be submitted to the court every 3 months. Sadly, only the first part of the order was followed. For 37 years, till he was 65, no health report was submitted. Jagjivan was a man arrested for murder but not convicted. With no court verdict, he was condemned to a life of lunacy, sentenced to spend nearly 4 decades in a mental asylum.
अब ये खामोश कोई इनको गहरा सदमा पहुंचा है जेल में, चाहे किसी भी कारणवश हो, चाहे वो टार्चर किया गया हो या कोई आरोप लगाया वहाँ पे कोई ऐसा व्यवहार इनके साथ हुआ हो जिससे इनकी याददाश्त, इनकी संवेदना शून्य हो गए हो। कोई बात तो इनके साथ हुई है जो इनको जो है इस स्थिति में लाके पहुंचा दिया।
When his family tried to meet him in prison, they were repeatedly turned away. Before the family could be informed, Jagjivan had already been shifted to Varanasi. Jail authorities, out of ignorance or sheer insensitivity and lack of interest, failed to provide his family any answers. Months turned into years and years into decades. His son growing up and his wife growing old lost all hope. For 37 years, Jagjivan shuttled between mental asylums and jails. No communication with the outside world. His repeated letters to his family remained undelivered.
कैसे बदला सकता है? इनके जब ये जेल गए हैं तो 1.5 साल का बच्चा था इनका। बच्चे की भी हसरत होती है कि अपने पिता के गोद में खेलें, लेकिन वो जेल में रहे, वो क्या सरकार उसको लौटा सकती है? जब बच्चा बड़ा हुआ, पला और किसी तरह से उसकी शादी हुई, क्या वो शादी के समय इनकी हसरत जो शादी में ये शामिल होते, उस समय ये शामिल नहीं हो पाए, क्या सरकार या जो है न्यायपालिका उसको लौटा सकती है? और 37 साल में बहुत कुछ खोया इन्होंने।
His family was forced to imagine the worst, that Jagjivan was probably dead. A poor family with little means and with the sole breadwinner gone, they lost the will to fight. A few portions of this story may seem strange to you, but please remember this was the early 70s, with few means of communication and almost no media attention. The letters that Jagjivan wrote were read almost 40 years later.
I hope you're well. I've tried writing to you many times, but my letters just don't seem to reach you. I don't feel like talking to anyone. I remain quiet. Everyone here thinks I'm crazy. But I'm not. I have wrongly been confined to this mental asylum. I miss you all a lot. How are you? How are you managing? Who is putting food on the table? Our son Keshav must be a grown man by now. Is he earning? It has been so many years. If you all have the time, please try to find me and get me out of here.
It was a desperate cry for help from a man who had been wiped off from the very system that had forced him into this sorry condition. Jagjivan was shouting for help, but no one was listening. The police and the judiciary both sleeping on his case.
इसको तो हम लापरवाही कहेंगे, चाहे वो प्रशासन की लापरवाही, चाहे जेल की लापरवाही किया जाए, चाहे अब अपनी इनकी लापरवाही अब किया, चाहे इनकी तकदीर की बात रही हो।
Finally, there was hope. The hospital authorities prepared a report declaring Jagjivan mentally fit and ready to be shifted back to prison. The report, after more than 3 decades, served as a shocking wake-up call for jail authorities. This was a clear-cut case of negligence, dereliction of duty by government servants, and a blatant violation of judicial proceedings.
We're talking about a system that forgot about the existence of a man, a system that denied him his constitutional and legal rights. If a system had forgotten him after putting him in jail, what hope was there that they'd be able to find his papers? Jagjivan may have suddenly come alive for them, but his case papers were buried in 4 decades of red tapeism.
There was hope when the courts managed to find a list of the witnesses in the case. But no surprises. Most of them were only on paper. Half had passed away. The others were untraceable. It was the year 2006. A vibrant media and more awareness led the TV Today network to stumble upon Jagjivan's story.
जगजीवन अनोखा कातिल है जो पिछले 37 बरस से सलाखों के पीछे बिना सजा के बंद है.
His story also being picked up by numerous national dailies. Thanks to the intense media coverage, Jagjivan's story managed to reach his family.
जब एक दिन पेपर में छपा तो जैसे एक हवा होती है ना, तो पेपर में छपा तो यहाँ से निकला, फिर कोई और पढ़ा, फिर गांव गया, फिर उस मजेरे गया, फिर उन्ने तक पास गया, ये सब पूरी बात कहानी जनती गई। जब पेपर में छपा तो हम लोग इनसे पूछे कि हाँ भैया आपके रिश्तेदार हैं, आखिर में आप लोग भी पेपर में पढ़े कि नहीं पढ़े? तो कहना भैया पढ़े हैं, उसी खोजबीन में हम लोग लगे हैं। तो हमने कहा ठीक है भाई, चलिए हम लोग भी गाँव लोग जो मदद होगी बताइएगा, हम लोग भी साथ रहेंगे कहीं कोई ज़रूरत पड़ेगी तो। फिर ये हुआ कि फिर बीच में आ गया आप लोग का चैनल आ गया, आज तक आ गया, जो भी आ रहा हो। फिर ये अपना छापा वापा, फिर वहाँ अपना क्या संज्ञान मिलिया, कोर्ट गया, कहाँ गया वो तो हम नहीं जानते हैं।
तो जब अखबार में दूसरा लागा आप लोगों की मेहरबानी से वो करे तो हम सब दौड़ाहट गया। हाँ तो छूटे, तब से घर पर यहाँ
जब यहाँ पेपरबाजी सभी ये सब बात होने लगी, आप सभी ये पूरा वहाँ से सहयोग हुआ तो इनको सबको जानकारी हुई। जानकारी की होने के बाद में तो फिर ये जेल वेल से अपना छूटे।
ये तो मीडिया का ही जो है वो है कि जो मीडिया के कारण जो है इनको एक नया जीवन मिला, अन्यथा जो है ये हमें लगता नहीं कि लोग यही मानते कि जा चुके हैं।
Coming up next, what was it like for his family, who 37 years later woke up one day to realize that Jagjivan, the husband, the father, the brother, had been alive all along? 37 years ago, when Jagjivan went to jail, his son was 1.5. Now he was almost 40, married with 5 children. Jagjivan had become a grandfather and he didn't even know about it. He's a man who missed out on the growing years of an entire generation of his family. An insensitive system had robbed him of the simple pleasures of life.
1.5 साल का बच्चा रहा बेटा, तो वो जेल चला गया तो मेरा पहाड़ टूट गया है। तो मैं क्या करी, मैं मेहनत मजदूरी किया, जी आया पाला, एक ग्राम है दवाई पानी कराई, फिर मेहनत मजदूरी करके शादी ब्याह किया। वो करीब बाद में जो अखबार से पता लागे तो फिर लगे पता कीन गया।
Jagjivan had been discovered all right, but the question of his release was still embroiled in red tapeism. Despite years of neglect and blatant ignorance by the jail authorities and the police, Jagjivan could not be released. He was a man who was still accused of a murder. But as an under trial, he'd spent 37 long years in jail. That's equivalent to almost 3 life terms.
जगजीवन 1968 में जेल गया और 1969 में मानसिक चिकित्सालय भेज दिया गया। इसके बीच में उसके घर वाले बराबर आते जाते रहे, लेकिन वो मुलाकात नहीं हो पाई तो लोग गए कि ख़त्म हो गया। इसके बाद ये पत्रावली संज्ञान में आई तो वो जेल से तलब हुआ। इसके बाद आज तक वाले खोजते खोजते और उन्होंने फरवरी में उसी दौरान जब वो संज्ञान में आया था तो चैनल पे दिखाया और 5 को दिखाया। उसी पर सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने संज्ञान लिया और मुचलके का आदेश करके उसको छोड़ दिया।
Armed finally with a concrete legal argument, his lawyer approached the Supreme Court in 2006. Going over his plight, a shocked apex court had nothing to say as the man in question had inadvertently paid the price for a murder with 3 life sentences. Enough was enough. It was finally time for his release, said the Supreme Court.
मुआवजा मिलना चाहिए, इनको आप सब सहायता मिलना चाहिए सरकार की तरफ से। हमारे सबके पक्ष में यही निवेदन है, इनको मिलना चाहिए। परेशान हैं और इतने दिन जेल काटी हैं, तो सरकार की तरफ से मुआवजा मिलना चाहिए इनको।
Today, it's been 8 years since his release. He was 28 when he was in prison, 65 when he was released, and now Jagjivan is 73 years old. He has lost the prime of his life locked behind bars. Ignored and forgotten by an insensitive system, and forgotten by his family and loved ones. There is nothing that anyone can do to make up for the time Jagjivan has lost. No money, no comfort, no gifts can compensate his loss. Who should be held responsible? The police, the courts, or the prisons? For all these years, Jagjivan was a man who had no say in his life. Now, he has literally lost his speech. Jagjivan barely talks. He's an old man who lost out on everything, including the will to live.
अब पता नहीं साहब, पहले ठीक ठाक थे, बोला जब से जेल गए हैं पता नहीं क्या बात भाई, तब से उनके बोलते हैं बोल ही नहीं पाते।
बोलने में भगवान जाने क्या दिक्कत है, बोलने में तेजी आवाज़ बिल्कुल नहीं बोल पाते हैं। बगल में खड़े रहो, इनसे राम राम करो, नमस्ते करो, तो ये मुंड से बोलते हैं बस। जैसे राम राम करो कहते हैं जय राम जी, ऐसे ही बोलते हैं।
आने के बाद इनकी हालत बहुत ख़राब थी, सोचने समझने शक्ति नहीं थी। जहाँ बैठा देते बैठे रहते, चलते चलते जाते। अब खाना पीना आप इनको देते या न देते, जैसा कि सुना है, तो वो मांगते नहीं थे। लोग भले पिला देते बुला करके, लेकिन अब धीरे धीरे इनका एक 6-7 साल में थोड़ा बहुत जो है बेहतरी की तरफ आए हैं।
In the end, the biggest irony is that we still don't know whether Jagjivan committed that crime or not. All we know is that he overdid his time. For 37 years, he paid the price of wrongdoings committed on him by the system. And not just him, his family also suffered and struggled with him. Ironically, a man whose name literally translates into a culmination of life and world was denied both.